Hello, how's everybody doing this evening? All right, my name is Sergeant Lassard. I'm with the Simsbury Police Department. I would like to thank everybody for showing up here today. This is a fantastic presentation. This is Kyle Testerman. He's with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. He's one of the biologists who manages the town of Simsbury. We also have our favorite animal control officer, Deborah Clark, and we are accompanied by the NCON Police Department. We have Sergeant D. Felice as well. It's going to be a fun, educational presentation. If you guys have any questions, are we holding them to the end?
Yeah.
Please hold your questions to the end, and then we'll be happy to call on you and answer anybody's questions. If there is a case of an emergency, you have an exit here, you have an exit there, and we will meet in the front parking lot where we walked in. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys for coming. My name is Kyle Testerman. I'm one of the wildlife biologists on the bear program. Okay, there's 3 microphones up here. Hopefully we get one to work. Okay. All right. Can you hear me better? Not really. Okay. It's on. Do I have to be this close? It's going to be a challenge. Is there
I don't know.
a switch?
Mobile ones?
A dial?
Nope.
It's kind of a dial for it.
I don't know. Is this it?
That's for this.
I don't know. Holler.
Yeah, I might have to.
He's very soft-spoken. Give it a try. It's awkward.
All right, can everybody hear me? All right, I guess this is how I gotta do it. All right, my name is Kyle. I'm one of the wildlife biologists for the DEP in the Wildlife Division. I work on the fur bear program, so not just bears, but all the other fur-bearing mammals in Connecticut. The way the program tonight is going to go, I'm going to give about an hour or so presentation about the bear population, what we do to study the bears. And then before we get to questions and answers, I'm going to have Sergeant D. Felice come up and briefly talk about what his role is at NCON and what NCON does with the bear population as well. After that, we'll both kind of field questions from you guys, and then that'll kind of conclude it. So without further ado, the overview, like I mentioned, my part specifically, I'm going to talk about bear biology and natural history in Connecticut. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that part because I think many of you already know the basics about black bears. I'm going to spend most of my time talking about how the DEP studies bears, how we study bears and manage the population, and then give you guys some tips for staying safe and reducing conflicts. Bears are a native species in Connecticut. They were present before colonization. But due to unregulated hunting and habitat loss, they were extirpated in the 1800s in Connecticut. Other mammals were also extirpated. I think a lot of people might be familiar with things like fishers. Turkeys were extirpated, beavers were extirpated, mountain lions were extirpated, never came back. But some of these other species have come back, and black bears are one of them. I'll talk a little bit more about how they returned in a little bit, but briefly I'm going to talk a little about what we kind of use to describe bears in Connecticut. We talk about cubs. A lot of people might think cubs can be, 1 year old, mom with their cubs, a female with their cubs, but we like to stick to talking about cubs as just a few months old. They're born in the den around late January or so, most commonly, and we consider them cubs through the first fall. They're going to be right now, they're around 15 to 30 pounds or so. They could be a little heavier too. But they're generally around the size, if you see them following a female, they're probably going to look like a small dog or a cat running behind them. Yearlings, though, those are the offspring of the female that might be hanging around with her through that next winter into the beginning of next spring. So we'll call those yearlings. At this point, yearlings have usually dispersed from their mother They're going to be looking out to disperse and spread out on their own. They're not reproductive yet. They're still sort of subadults. They're not reproductive. And they're kind of just looking at where they should go. They get kicked out by the mom at this point in the year for them because the female is going to look for opportunities to reproduce or breed again. We call the adult female bears, you can call them sows. And then adult male bears, you can call them boars. How big are black bears? I think you guys have probably seen a variety of bears of different sizes. But when they're born, they're about the size of a soda can. They're very small, about 8 ounces or so. But they grow very quickly. You can see this other bear here. This is another bear from Simsbury that weighed about 500 pounds. So they can grow pretty quickly. In a few years, they can go from a soda can to a lawnmower pretty quickly. What are bears eating? Naturally, the foods around that make up good bear habitat with food are green vegetation. In the springtime, things like skunk cabbage are very important for bears because they're one of the first things to green up in the spring. Insects, including wasp nests, people's beehives, and ground nesting insects like ants make up a good proportion of their diet as well. And then things like fruits and berries that are found naturally throughout the wild here. We may just think of blueberries out there, but there's many different species of plant that offers berries throughout the year. And those are also called soft mast. But by far the biggest proportion of a bear's diet throughout the year, their natural diet throughout the year, comes from hard mast. And that includes things like acorns, beech nuts, hickory nuts. Those are very high-calorie foods that tend to be produced late in the season, and that makes up a large component of their diet, especially as we get into the fall when bears are going through a phase we call hyperphagia. When they're looking to pack on the pounds as much as they can, eating things like acorns provides a substantial amount of calories for them to gain that weight. But is that all that bears are eating? No, I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have seen bears, either pictures of them or in person, eating from a bird feeder, taking down a bird feeder, or getting into someone's garbage, probably your garbage at some point as well. So those are also bigger pieces of what bears are eating, especially in communities with a lot of trash cans and bird feeders. How do bears find all that food naturally? I mean, it's one thing to find smelly garbage or to smell a suet cake or something at your bird feeder. But when it comes to finding food naturally, they have the best sense of smell probably in the world, bears in general. It's 100 times better than ours. It's about 10 times better than a dog, and they can smell things from over a mile away. So they can travel many, many miles every day, and that's how they're just following their nose, able to find that food. So if you think, man, how could that bear smell that from, this food inside my garage? Well, that's how they evolved, to have one of the best senses of smell around. Where are bears living? You may not think bear habitat might include places like Hartford or West Hartford or some more densely populated suburbs. But what makes suitable habitat for a bear, really any animal, is some combination of food, water, shelter, and space, and the arrangement of all those things. And for bears, since they travel so much, they don't need to have all of those components in one small area. They can get what they need by traveling and finding a place that has good cover and shelter, another place that has enough food, another spot that has water. If all of that is within an area that they can get to, that type of habitat can be more spread out. And when they tolerate human presence more and more, that means some places like West Hartford can have a lot more suitable habitat than you might think, which then shouldn't surprise you when you start to see bears more and more in those types of places. The time frame that bears do things throughout the year varies, but I'm going to focus on 2 main periods of time that I think most people know a little bit about. One of those times is right now, and that's kind of the breeding season. Females will mate every other year if they're successful in rearing cubs. So every other year that female is going to breed. The cubs that will stay with their mother and learn through that first year, they do grow quickly and they can be pretty independent in just a few months. As I mentioned, for yearlings right now, the sow has pushed them out, so they've dispersed, and the boars now are following the sows around. So you may have seen a big bear just sort of following or shadowing a smaller bear that might be a female. They're looking for opportunities to breed with those females when they go through periods of estrus and are fertile and are receptive to breeding. If they're bred this time of year, The eggs get fertilized, but then they don't actually get actively pregnant until later in the fall. There's a process called delayed implantation of that fertilized embryo. So it goes into a period of diapause, it stops developing after a few divisions, and it doesn't implant into the uterine wall until late in the fall, after the female is in good health and has gained enough weight, she may become actively pregnant for a relatively short gestation period. It's in that period of denning that they'll give birth. Denning season starts around December, whenever it kind of gets cold, and especially if we have some early snow cover. But snow cover at any time of winter now is pretty rare. I mentioned it's preceded by that fall period of big eating, hyperphagia, when they're eating all those acorns and the hard mass to gain calories as much as they can. It's not quite hibernation. I know kind of colloquially you could call it hibernation. It's a type of torpor, but it's the same strategy of hibernation that true hibernators like woodchucks or bats use, and it's meant as an energy-saving tool. Bears are very, very big. It would take a lot of energy to warm that body back up from 32 degrees or so, like a bat might be hibernating at, or a woodchuck, all the way back up to what they're running at in the 90s. It would take a lot of energy, and it wouldn't be efficient. So bears kind of balance that out by letting their body temperature drop, saving energy. Their metabolism slows quite a bit, but they can still re-warm quickly if there's danger, if there's a threat. So they can still be very active in the winter. They can get up quickly, even if they've been denning. But it's that striking that balance of energy efficiency and being able to be active if there's danger. The cubs are born in the den, usually in January, can be into early February. And the yearlings will generally den with the mother, but they won't be denning quite as close usually, like cubs will be with the mother. Yearlings might be denning with her, but they might be just kind of in some trees nearby, denning. They don't have to be right with her. But the big take home about the winter time, even though you think bears should be hibernating, is that they can be active any time of year. If we don't have a good snow cover, or if it's a lot of warm spells, you can definitely see bears in the winter. So now we're going to pivot. That's kind of the general thing with black bears that I'm going to cover, and now I'm going to kind of go into more about how we study bears and why and what we're learning. I want to start by just sharing the mission of our program. I think it's important to help put in perspective of what we're trying to accomplish when we're making decisions about bears, or how we try to educate the public, and when we might have to respond to certain things. Our mission is to maintain a healthy, sustainable black bear population in Connecticut by using varied management strategies to reduce human-bear conflicts to a level that is acceptable to the citizens of Connecticut, while still allowing population expansion into unoccupied, suitable habitat. How is all that accomplished? Well, we need to collect data. Research is one of our tools that we have available to us. So I'm going to go into a little more detail into what data we need to actually make some informed decisions, how we collect it, and then how we can apply what's learned to our management and educational practices. One of the things that we get asked the most as biologists when it comes to anything with the bears is, how many are there? How many are there? As if that's going to be the tell-all about exactly what the situation in Connecticut is regarding bears. How many bears are there? How many bears are there? Truth is, an estimate like that isn't that useful to how we're going to actually practice and manage the population in Connecticut. And it's not that useful to you as the public to know, okay, well, they say there's 1,000 bears, but I think there's 2,000 bears. Does that actually make a big difference to how you're interacting with the bears in your backyard? No. We actually want to get a lot more information, and I'm going to go into that in a second. Estimates are one of the pitfalls with a very accurate estimate is that it's very time and labor intensive. In the end, it's not that informative of a piece of data. UConn and the Wildlife Division did work together to come up with an estimate in 2013, 2014. It took several years of planning and fieldwork to collect the genetic samples. What they did was they set up these barbed wire corrals along here so that a bear would walk through it and leave some hair on the wire. Those were genetically analyzed and to provide an estimate of how many bears were in that area. And they put those plots throughout a number of parts of Connecticut. Their estimate at the time in 2014 was that there were about 800 bears, including juveniles. Now we say it probably could be closer to 1,000 or 1,200 bears now. Now, one thing people will often think about or say, if I were to say, oh, there's about 1,200 bears in Connecticut, some people would scoff at it and say there's got to be at least 2,000 or 3,000. The reality is, if there's about 17 or 1.7 million acres or 2,700 square miles of forest in Connecticut, roughly split in half, east and west. So that 1,300 square miles of forested land in the western half is occupied by about 1,200 bears. That's a pretty good amount of bears for this half of the state. What numbers really matter to us as wildlife managers? Well, things that actually might factor into something that we call an index, a population index. It's sort of used as a substitute, obviously, for the total population, but it's far more informative for us to understand how the bear population is behaving in Connecticut. And I'm talking population behavior, not necessarily individual behaviors. So you might want to look at things like range expansion. How much is this population changing in their range year to year or decade by decade? What's the survival and mortality for the population generally? So how long are they living? What proportion of the bears survive their first year? How many are being struck by vehicles and dying on the roadways, and where are those things occurring? We can also look at things regarding reproduction, such as at what age are females first reproducing? How big is their litter size when they're having when they are reproducing? And then importantly, what level of conflicts is the public dealing with? What are the causes of those conflicts, and what can we learn from those conflicts to help prevent them in the future? Those numbers that we can collect that way are far more informative for us to help the public and to understand the bear population, rather than just a number. So how do we get those numbers we're looking for to build that index? We'll use a number of different research methods, not inclusive here in this list, but we'll use non-invasive surveys. So we'll use things like camera traps or hair snares. We'll look at public sighting reports. We collect sighting reports from the public, and I'll talk about that in more detail later. We do some live trapping. We'll do telemetry on collared animals. We'll also do the den visits that I mentioned. And then we do necropsies on bears. Mostly, just about every one of the roadkill bears that happen in Connecticut, we try to collect and conduct a necropsy on it to learn what we can from that event. This convoluted slide is meant to look convoluted because I'm trying to show you guys how each of these methods helps us learn put together a piece of that puzzle for learning more about things like species distribution. So when we look at the sighting reports that maybe you guys have submitted to us, how does that actually help us? Well, we learn more about the distribution of the population. We learn about survival because people can report tagged bears to us, and we know that, okay, that bear, we tagged it 5 years ago, and now somebody just reported it to us, 40 miles away. That bear's still alive. We can learn about reproduction. Where are people reporting females with offspring to us? And then obviously we can learn about conflicts. That's kind of the primary way that we learn about human-bear conflicts is through our sighting reports. So we don't have to go through every one of those, but the point is, when we collect sighting reports, when we do necropsies, when we do den visits, we're getting pieces of the puzzle here to put together to have a better sense of what the population is doing in Connecticut. I'm going to now kind of go through each one of those right here a little bit in more detail. So a question for you can raise your hands. Have any of you ever submitted a sighting report to us, a bear sighting report to us? Cool. Have any of you submitted anything other than a bear sighting report? We also collect bobcat sightings, fisher sightings, moose sightings, a few. Yeah. So they actually are useful to us. Many people think, oh, why do I bother reporting this? I see a bear all the time. I see the same bear. Why do I have to bother? We don't have to bother. It's voluntary. But it is helpful to us because we actually do read every single one of those. We collected about 10,000 sighting reports last year, and we're on pace to have a similar amount this year. Of those 10,000 sighting reports, 3,200 were reports of some type of damage or human-bear conflict. The sighting reports are also a way that you can tell us whether the bear had ear tags and describe those ear tags if you can, whether the bear had a collar on it, whether there were cubs or offspring with it, and provide your narrative about an editorial about what happened, particularly important for conflicts. Oftentimes the public perception for sighting reports is they're useless, it's a waste of time, DEEP doesn't do anything about it. But like I said, we actually do read every single one of them, but just because you submitted a sighting report doesn't mean it needs to get a response. If you are having issues and you need to talk to us, you can put that in the comments and we'll reach out to you. Or you can call one of our other numbers. But we really do take these seriously because they are an important piece of how we learn about the bear population. Another method there I mentioned was trapping and tracking the bears. So we have about 30 or so female bears fitted with GPS radio collars. Part of our long-term research project where we're using this data to learn a lot about the bears, it collects scheduled GPS points. We can adjust those points throughout the year. We get more points during when the bears are active, and we schedule fewer points to be taken when they're denning. They also transmit a radio signal over a unique frequency. One of the misconceptions about the bear collars is that we can just pinpoint and look up on my computer exactly where that bear is at all times. The reality is I can see where that bear has been in the past. We get a batch of points that get uploaded to us from an online service, but we don't know exactly where that bear is. The only way to find where that bear is to go out into the field and listen for the radio frequency, the beep that's transmitted over the radio frequency unique to that collar. So we actually do have to get in the field sometimes to test and make sure those collars are working, or if we need to find where that bear's denning, we do that using the radio signal that it emits. But we do take those GPS points when we recover the collar during our den visits. We take the collar off, refit a new collar on, bring that collar in and download the data. And then we can take those GPS points throughout the year, overlay them on a habitat map, for example, and we can learn about the habitat that female bears are using. So we talk about sort of the collared female bears. We use those part of our long-term research, and we can learn what their preferred habitat is for the reproducing population, and then we can model that suitable habitat elsewhere in Connecticut. I'm going to show you a little bit of that research afterwards here. The other thing we can do as a result of trapping and tracking is find those winter dens. And we can use that VHF, the radio frequency, get to where the female denning is, and then we can sedate her. While we do that, we'll kind of assess her body condition each year. I mentioned taking the collar off, we'll refit it, put a new collar on, and then we'll examine her offspring. We'll see how big her litter size was. If it's a yearling den, we'll see how many of those cubs that were with her last year have stayed with her and survived their first year here. We also learn about the different den types, the areas that bears are denning. You can see in the circle here, this is just sort of a hollow at the base of a tree. The bear has kind of dug out a little nest bowl in a mountain laurel grove, and that's very often what bears will den in. Occasionally it might be in a rock den or a rock crevice, but also underneath decks and porches more often than we used to. When we do these den visits and we look at the offspring, we will take measurements on the cubs as well. Every bear we handle there gets a pit tag, so the cubs will get a pit tag, which is very similar to what goes into your cats and dogs, the microchip. Same thing, it's a passive identification tag. And then the yearlings, so at this point they're 12 months old or 13, 14 months old. If we handle them, we'll sedate them and give them ear tags now so they can be identified more clearly. I mentioned all bears that we handle get the pit tags. So here we are, the sedated bear here is, we're scanning for that pit tag, and then the cub here is getting the pit tag applied, put into it. So what do the ear tags mean? This is another point of misconception for the public very often, is what do ear tags mean on a bear? So raise your hand if you think if a bear has ear tags, it's caused problems. A few people, okay. It may be the case, but bears are tagged often for our research purposes. Probably, I don't know the exact breakdown, but many bears are trapped and tagged during our research that we do throughout the year. They're not usually associated with a nuisance or problem event or a conflict event. So if you see a bear with ear tags, it doesn't mean that it was causing conflicts. If you see a bear with 2 ear tags, it does not mean that it was caught twice causing a problem. Every bear that we handle that's not a cub will get 2 ear tags. And the ear tags are just cattle tags. There's nothing special about it. There's no tracker built into it. We'll often also get complaints that these tags are so big and they're inhumane. They're put on every cow and livestock in Connecticut as well, so we don't feel that they are any sort of cruel or anything to have them on these animals here. The color and the number correspond to the year that they're tagged. Here's a list here for 2024. We generally are tagging our bears with yellow ear tags. Last year was white. And then the identification here, you can see on this ear tag down at the bottom, this was the 13th bear tagged in 2019. So we go by that series. So the next bear that would get tagged after this bear would be 149 and then 159. So you can tell what year a bear was tagged generally by the color and the number on their tag. Can anybody tell what color this is? Green. Yeah, so it looks green now, but they do fade. So oftentimes people will say, oh, I look kind of blue or look kind of pink. It's hard to tell because they do fade and they kind of will fade and kind of look more like another color over time. But the number is for the most part, unique. The next piece of those research methods I'm going to talk about are the necropsies. So I mentioned we get a couple dozen roadkill bears every year, bears that get hit by vehicles throughout the state. We try to collect them and do a necropsy on them. And while we're doing that, we'll look at their body condition. We'll try to estimate their age. We'll extract a tooth and send that to a lab to examine the rings on the tooth. We'll take tissue samples and send those with labs that we're working with to learn more about different diseases or environmental exposures that bears are having. Importantly, we'll scan for a pit tag to know if it's a known bear or not. If it was a cub that we never contacted again or a different bear that lost its ear tags, scanning for a pit tag is important. It's also important because we may get a bear from another state coming into Connecticut that gets hit by a vehicle, and scanning for a pit tag there would be helpful in learning more about that bear's life history. We then go inside and we look at the reproductive tracts of the females. So we can tell if the female has bred before or how many cubs perhaps she had recently, if she was struck by a vehicle while she's, has young of the year right now. And then we also look at the stomach contents. And for the most part, when we look at stomach contents, we'd like to see mostly natural foods. We don't want to see human-related foods. Things like trash, black oil, sunflower seeds, human foods, things that might indicate the bear has been eating human-related foods. We've been finding that about half of the bear stomachs have some type of human-related food in that, including plastics and things like that. So that is, for the most part, sourced from our garbage. So it's not helpful. It's not good for the bear, obviously, to be eating trash, ingesting trash and garbage. So if you need another reason not to let the bears do that, it's not good for them either. We do quite a few necropsies every year. This data is here, latest from 2021, but we're following the same trend. We do 50 to 60 bear necropsies every year, probably 70 to 90 bobcat necropsies, and a few fisher necropsies every year. So we are building a very large data set over time that we can learn about the population. The next slide, or next part of the slide, has contents of a bear's stomach. It's not graphic, it's just mashed up green vegetation and ants, but it may look gross. So this is just mashed up green vegetation that the bear was foraging on naturally. There's a bunch of little red ants in here and their larvae throughout it. And that's a good sign for a bear that it was eating natural foods. So briefed you over those methods that we're studying, that we used to study. What have we actually learned? We know bears began to recolonize, mostly in northwest Connecticut in the 1980s or so. They've been reported in kind of many towns, but it wasn't until we had sightings of females with offspring did we know that there was reproduction happening in the state. So if there's females with offspring in some town in Connecticut, those cubs were likely born nearby. A mother with young of the year cubs is not likely to travel very far with those. So it was evident that we had a reproducing population at some point in the late 90s. This is a map of of the sightings of females with offspring back from 2004. And you can see even at that point, there were quite a few sightings of females with cubs in Simsbury in the Farmington Valley area. Fast forward to today, and we've got several hundred sightings of bears per town throughout the state. Bears have been sighted in every town in Connecticut. So even though most of the bear sightings happen in the western half of the state. Bears are in every town in Connecticut. Our continued population growth, again, getting this through all those data points that I was talking about, all those research methods, our population has continued to grow. Where we see the dashed lines here, that's where we know we have consistent reproduction of females. That's really where our breeding range is. And so that essentially means that's where our population of breeding adult black bears is. We definitely get sightings, obviously, outside of that. Most of those bears outside of that area, though, and the sightings on the previous page, a lot of that is younger bears that are dispersing or traveling and wandering. They probably don't have an established home range per se, and certainly aren't females over there, very many females over there reproducing. But what we're seeing is this expansion from this core area into other parts of Hartford County, down into New Haven and Fairfield counties as well. So more and more of the state is starting to get those females with offspring in those areas, and that's a sign that the population is continuing to grow. We're also seeing the number of towns with females with offspring increasing. So a few years ago, say back in even just 2019, there were females with offspring in about 60 towns, and now we're seeing females with offspring being reported in over 90 towns. So the population is growing and expanding still. What's kind of fueling and driving that growth is suitable habitat. If there was not suitable habitat, the population would not be able to grow there because it wouldn't have the things it needs. The majority of habitat in Connecticut is unoccupied. I showed you where the breeding range is. Most of this area in green is outside of that. What that tells us is that there's a lot of room to grow for the population. Right? Most of the population is in western half of the state, but there's a lot of good habitat in the eastern half. So what should we expect for the population as a whole, statewide, is that the number of bears will likely increase quite a bit more, and there's plenty of room for them to grow. So if there's a rough estimate of 1,200 bears now, if Connecticut was fully occupied in suitable habitat, there could easily be, twice that. But one of the things that's driving this growth, too, is not just suitable habitat, but some behavioral changes over time. Because we're finding that females are selecting for exurban or sort of suburban, exurban housing densities where they're able to stay in cover and have forested cover, but there's access to human-related foods in those areas too. So they're selecting for that type of habitat. And some of that is triggered by behavioral changes. Things like more human habituation, being more comfortable around people, and then food conditioning over time. I'm going to get into those a little bit more later too. We find that females are basically getting like a reproductive boost because of all these extra human-related foods they're getting. And so females are actually, they're able to have more offspring in some of these areas where there's a boost that they're getting. And so in areas you wouldn't necessarily think of bears occupying, let alone reproductive bears, we're finding them more and more in these types of areas like Simsbury. But a couple concepts I want to go over quickly are biological and cultural carrying capacity. I mentioned that there's a lot of room to grow for the bear population. So people will often think, without knowing that we must be overpopulated, we have way too many bears, we must be over carrying capacity. What they tend to mean is they think they're meaning biological carrying capacity, which is the maximum amount of individuals of that species that you could have in one area for indefinitely. And obviously, with kind of what I was just saying, there's a lot more room for bears to grow in Connecticut. So we're nowhere near statewide, we're nowhere near that biological carrying capacity. What we end up hitting quite often, and this changes a lot over time too, is the cultural carrying capacity, which is the maximum number of individuals of a species that the human population will tolerate. And I think you all can probably think of a number of factors that might affect your own personal tolerance for bears and how that might change individually, year to year, depending on your experiences with bears. And then imagine that for the whole population of how many bears people are willing to tolerate in an area. So those are two things to kind of keep in mind if you're getting frustrated and think, the bears are way overpopulated in this state. There's a lot more room to grow. So I talked about those changes over time, the behavioral changes, and also these reproductive changes. Female bears are starting to see are reproducing at a younger age. They're gaining a lot of weight. They're reaching sort of a threshold where they're basically mature, sexually mature into adults, and they can have their first offspring as early as their third year. So they can be breeding at 2.5 years old. Doesn't happen often, but we're seeing that more and more. Typically for a female black bear outside of Connecticut and more remote areas and still in parts of Connecticut, females might take 4.5 to 5.5 years to have that first litter. We're seeing that in some cases at 2.5, have their first period of breeding. Litter sizes for our cohort of collared bears, which for us has been an indicator for female bears in the rest of the state, their litter size has been increasing. From 2008 to 2015, they've been averaging 2.2 cubs per litter for, say, every 10 reproducing females that year. That's increased now to 2.6. So the population, the litter size has been increasing. Another important factor is cub survival. How many cubs that were born in that first year survive their first year and are able to, are denning with the mother where we can count them. Those have also been increasing. Our long-term average is about 75%, which is still quite high, but in recent years we've had quite a high number of cubs survive their first year. So cub survival has been increasing. The take-home for this is that the population in Connecticut is growing faster than it was even a decade ago because litter size and cub survival are increasing. The big behavioral changes that I mentioned, and these are behavioral changes not just in the female bears, but in every bear you're going to see and encounter in this part of the state. Many bears have become habituated to people, which by itself is not a bad thing. Think about bears that are in national parks. If they're tolerant of being seen by people, they've gotten habituated to some extent. It doesn't mean that they're going to be, attacking your campsite. Just because they're not running away when you see a bear off in the distance in Yellowstone or something like that. But they're becoming desensitized generally to our everyday activities. They're losing their natural fears of people, which I'm sure many of you here have experienced. What it took to scare a bear away 10 years ago doesn't work very well now. Works for some, but for especially older bears that are used to people for years and years, it's less effective. And that, again, is taught to those offspring generation after generation. The important behavioral change, which has bigger consequences, is the food conditioning. And that's really where bears are being rewarded to come look around homes and residential areas for food. They're getting easy, high-calorie food rewards, things like the trash and the bird feeders that are being kept outside our windows or nearby. So that's behavior. To search for that, they get a big food reward, they're more likely to then go to the neighbor's house or come back to your house over and over, especially if they're getting that reward over and over. We're conditioning bears in that sense to come look for food at our homes. All right, and that kind of becomes a progressive behavior. Bear may get a bird feeder one time in your backyard and you think, no big deal. But that behavior will progress. They'll come back again and again, look for the trash, sniff the grill. And eventually for some bears, it may mean entering a home and looking for the trash inside the house. So it's kind of an observed progressive behavior for those bears that are doing that. And that's kind of where we have the biggest problem. Those bears that are so comfortable, not afraid of people, and being conditioned to look for food around our homes are the ones that are most likely to cause more serious conflicts, structural damage inside your house, getting into the house, and those are when situations get more serious. Those situations I'm kind of alluding to, these human-bear conflicts. Our conflicts have been rising as well, as not just the number, but the number of places those things are occurring. So it's not just that we're having more and more conflicts in Simsbury, the Farmington Valley. They're happening more and more throughout the state as the population gets more habituated and food conditioned. We've had conflicts in about over 130 of Connecticut's 169 towns for the last several years. So this isn't just an issue of increasing human-bear conflicts in this area. This is an issue throughout the state of rising human-bear conflicts. All right, so what we're finding though is more and more the public is asking for help. They're asking for more assistance on how to prevent and address some of these issues, from the trash can to the home entry to the livestock depredation. All those issues the public is looking for more help with. Thinking back to what our mission is and trying to manage human-bear conflicts within an acceptable level, this is kind of where we're trying to learn what's most effective for helping to mitigate these issues. What we're finding, though, thanks to those sighting reports, is that the vast majority of the human-bear conflicts reported to us, sort of that nuisance bear activity, if you want to call it that, comes from trash and bird feeders. The vast majority, about 2/3 of all the human-bear conflicts in Connecticut and the damage reported to us is from those two sources. And that's from over 12,000 reports to us. The vast majority of those, bird feeders and trash specifically, are preventable by simple human actions. Taking down your bird feeders, even if it's in the winter. We live in an area with lots of bears. Bears can be active all year round. Take down the bird feeders, even the hummingbird feeders this time of year. Those are still very attractive to bears. Secure your garbage. Get a bear-proof garbage can or put, you can get these bin locks or can locks if you can't get a bear-proof can. But those things are preventable. We can reduce those, we can reduce the amount of human-bear conflicts. And every single one of those is a habituation or a conditioning event for that bear. So every one of those bird feeder and trash events might lead to another event. We're seeing those increases, We're seeing increases in conflicts over the years. We're also seeing those more serious conflicts increase as well. Even though they make up a small proportion of the pie here, home entries, pet attacks, livestock attacks, structural damage has been increasing. All of those have been increasing quite a bit. Structural damage can be anything from a bear attempting to get into the house, ripping siding off a house, breaking through screens, ripping down barn doors, busting through garage doors to get to your trash. All those things have been increasing, and we provide technical assistance to many, many, many members of the public every year regarding those. All right, so we're seeing things like home entries increase quite a bit. We've so far this year, we've already had 38 home entries from 14 different towns through June. All right, that's more than we had all of last year. Last year we had 35 from 15 towns. All right, so those are just where the bears successfully got in that were reported to us. I know there are more, but often people are hesitant to report them to us. And there are many, many more attempted entries where bears caused structural damage trying to get into a home, but either were thwarted or were scared away by the resident who was home. Either way, structural damage can cost a lot of money to repair from bears. There's also a great potential for human, bear, and pet altercations when a bear does get inside your house. So if you think about all the situations where you might have been upstairs or you stepped out, the dog was inside, your cat was inside, kids were inside, and the bear gets in, there's a great potential for an altercation. We've also had an increase in the number of sort of human attacks over the last few years. Notably was the one in Morris a couple years ago. And then also livestock depredations. Chickens, which generally are easily protected with electric fence, all of these are actually, but more livestock depredations on even things like goats and sheep and attacks on other hoof stock. Connecticut is unique in many ways. One of the ways we wish we weren't unique was the number of home entries from bears. Connecticut has way, way more home entries, bears getting into residences, than in any other state. We also have the strictest definition of what a home entry is. We, for our data, categorize a home entry as when a bear gets into the living space of a house. So not into the porch, not into the garage, a three-season room, but into the actual living space of the garage. We get tons of reports of bears getting into porches, breaking through screen doors and getting into the porch area where trash might have been stored, or breaking into a garage, breezeways, that sort of thing. We consider home entries just those areas in the living space of the house that are commonly occupied. Other states are not as strict with that definition, where porch entries, garage entries can count as home entries. Even with our very strict definition, we have way more home entries than other states that have much, much larger bear populations than we do. So when you scale them for about every 100 bears in the estimated population, okay, we have 3 home entries per 100 bears. Again, very rough estimate here. All right, but no other state, even New York with 5,000 bears, even Massachusetts with about 4,500 bears, no one comes close to us in this regard. Our bears are entering homes way, way more frequently than our neighbors. All right, this should not be a regular occurrence in Connecticut, coming home and finding a bear in your kitchen, or looking down your stairs and seeing a bear standing over your child carrier. But this is common in Connecticut. The easiest way, like I mentioned, to prevent the vast majority of those conflicts is to remove the attractants and deter bears from getting those food rewards. All right, remove the bird feeders altogether. I already went over this, but it bears repeating. Hot pepper, Niger seed, hummingbird feeders are all calories. Bears will still eat them. There is no level of hot pepper that a bear won't eat. It may prefer to go to your neighbor's bird feeder without that, but a bear will still eat that hot pepper suet and that hot pepper sunflower. Hummingbird feeders is simple syrup. What bear is not going to want to drink that up? All right? Those are all attractive and can all lead to food conditioning for bears to come to your house and look for more of that type of food. Do your best to prevent access to trash and food waste. Who here has a bear-resistant trash can? I think it's maybe less than a quarter raised their hands. More and more trash haulers in this area, Simsbury specifically, has bear-resistant cans available to them. Payne's offers them, Always offers them. I know they run out of supply because people need them, are asking for them, but more and more they are available to residents in other towns as well. And I highly encourage everyone to get a bear-resistant trash can. You will probably never have to pick up the trash outside that gets strewn about. Our communities can stay cleaner. I don't know how many times I've walked to like an open space area that's next to a residential area and they're littered with bear garbage. Because people aren't gonna, they might pick up the trash that's in their backyard, but if that bear dragged that bag to the wetlands next door, that trash is gonna stay there. So no matter whatever is gonna motivate you to get a bear-resistant trash can or keep bears out of your trash, whether it's keeping our wetlands and our protected areas clean, not having trash littering our community because bears aren't gonna clean it up, all right? Not having to pick it up yourself, not having to get out at 5 in the morning to bring your bin out there hoping the bear's not there waiting for the can, all right? And the bear not getting food conditioned. Those are all reasons enough to not allow bears access and to get a bear-resistant trash can. If you can't get a bear-resistant trash can, there are things you can do to make your trash less attractive. This is a black bear resistant certified thing. It's called a trash locker. You can come up and take a look at it. They're like $45, but you still have to unlock it before the trash can comes to pick it up. You can put ammonia in your trash. You can try to make it unpalatable to mask the scent as well. You can put ammonia-soaked rags all over the can. You can try bungees. They can be effective for some period of time for some bears because you're kind of covering what that scent is. But if there's a food reward in there, a bear's going to still probably want to get it. So please try to get a bear-resistant trash can. Another important thing to keep in mind is that intentional feeding of bears is illegal in Connecticut now. This is kind of a new thing. It's crazy that it only is a new thing, but laws that were enacted in October of last year that went into effect, it's illegal to intentionally feed black bears. This means spreading seed out, with bears getting it repeatedly, and Sergeant DeFelice can talk more about that part in a little bit. But at least we have that where it's now illegal to feed bears. It wasn't before, which is crazy. But one of the biggest hurdles, and maybe you live in a community that deals with this, is you might be doing everything right, but your neighbor, someone down the road, someone in your neighborhood, it only takes one person to be sloppy with their garbage, to refuse to put their bird feeder away, and that still is going to attract bears to your neighborhood. And so you're going to have much more frequent bear visitations looking around homes for more of those food rewards. So compliance within the community, it really is one of the biggest hurdles, especially for a population that's already so habituated. I'm going to touch on some of these conflict prevention things now. So that's all the stuff we've learned. We've learned what causes our conflicts. Now what have we learned about what's effective at preventing them? In Simsbury and in all the towns around, livestock are killed by bears. You may not know it, but we work with a lot of the people who have livestock and beehives who are dealing with this type of damage. The most effective way of preventing conflict with your livestock and beehives and other agriculture, fruiting trees, etc., is with electric fencing. properly set up and maintained electric fencing for bears. It's highly effective. In the long run, it's the most cost-effective way to keep bears from killing your goats and sheep and pigs, chickens, beehives, any of that. It's long-lasting. It's on guard 24/7. All right? So even if you felt like you were so mad that a bear got into your chicken coop, you would shoot it. You can't do that, and there's a better way to prevent it. Because even if that one bear was removed, what's keeping the next bear from coming and taking advantage of your vulnerable set again? So electric fencing is what's going to be effective long term. It's effective on brown bears, effective on polar bears. It's going to be effective on our black bears here in Connecticut. We have a lot of resources about electric fencing for people. If you have questions, you can feel free to talk to us and come and email me. We have information up on the table about electric fencing. We really want to encourage people to get it and to not be so intimidated by it, because it's much more affordable than people think, and it's much more effective and safe. Another important thing you can do is to try to help reduce the habituation in bears. It's by scaring them. Kind of have this corny saying, but if you care, scare the bear. So we want to make bears feel uncomfortable about searching your property for human-related food rewards. If a bear is foraging on the, in the woods, eating, acorns or eating green vegetation, enjoy that experience, of it doing wild things. But if the bear is circling your house, stopping by your house every few days, looking to see if the bird feeder's been refilled, or looking to see if there's trash in the garbage, try to scare those bears away. Don't let them become so comfortable about finding food around your house. All right. If you are going to scare a bear, we encourage you to do it safely, so make sure you're in a safe place. Don't endanger yourself, but try things like making loud noises directly at a bear. It's not going to be effective to blow an air horn or to blow a whistle from me to the people in the back. All right, you're not going to care if I do that to you. If you're a bear, what's the big difference? But if you're 20 feet away, or if you're out gardening in your yard and you get surprised by a bear, an air horn directed at you is going to be much louder and much more startling and alarming, and the bear's going to want to get away. So if you can do things, make loud noises directed at the animal, you can throw things at them. You can throw tennis balls or baseballs. You're not trying to hurt the bear, you're just trying to give it a physical contact, so it's saying, oh yeah, I better scoot, I better get out of here. I didn't think they cared about me being here, but they do. All right. Depending on where you are, how should I phrase it? I have had success using paintball markers, which are paintball guns, to safely scare bears away. Every situation is different, and there are different rules in different towns about what you can do. So I'm not going to endorse one thing or the other, but they're effective. Doing things to make physical contact with the bear safely with something like a paintball gun or a slingshot or baseballs, golf balls, things like that, can be effective at giving bears that physical reminder to move along quickly. Officer Clark has a few experiences she can share later about how she scares bears away very often in town. A couple things to keep in mind, though, if you are going to scare bears, is make sure that they have an escape route. Obviously, you shouldn't be trying to scare a bear away if you're in the garage and the bear's there and there's only one way out and it's through you. Make sure they have an escape route. If a female climbs a tree or if a female has cubs, stop. Let them move along on their own without needing to elevate the situation too much. But every time that bear returns, you want to continue to reinforce that, so that not only are they now not getting food in your backyard, but they're also getting bothered every time, where it's not going to be worth their time trying to get food in your yard. If there's no reward, and all there is risking somebody yelling or throwing things at me, why would you spend any more time there? You're going to look in other places for the food sources. So doing that will make that bear less habituated in your area at least, and doing that all around the community will help make bears more wary of people. So we want them to be wild. So keep this important point here in mind. Every time you let a bear search for food around your home, especially human-related foods around your home, that's a habituation and a conditioning event in that bear's life. Every bird feeder, every trash can. So if we all care about the bears, that should upset us to have bears get that kind of conditioning event. We don't want that to happen. So if you care about them, don't let them get that food reward and scare them away. Help keep them wild. It's important to stay safe, though, when we do live in a community that has a lot of bears, is don't lure them to your yard. Number one, if you're concerned about bears coming into your yard very frequently, if you're sort of scared or wary of them, don't lure them to your yard unintentionally with food attractants. Keep your garage closed, especially if you store food or garbage inside there. I don't know how many times a bear gets into a garage because they've got where they keep their trash, or they have their refrigerator or freezer in there. All right, that's another conditioning event for that bear to come break into different garages where it smells things. Don't store food in your car, and keep your doors locked. I don't know how many times it happens in these communities, and I'm sure the police can attest to how many issues can be prevented by people locking their car doors at night or anytime. Thefts and bear entries. All right, be smart about screen doors and windows. It's hot, but we get some cool air. People want to open the screens and let the airflow come in. That's an invitation for a bear. It's sorry to say that it is, in some cases, too dangerous or too risky to keep screens open, especially on a first floor in these areas. Unless you can attend them, don't leave them unattended. Good habits. Check your yard before letting your pets out. Don't let the dog bolt out there, not realizing that there's a bear right in the yard eating grass. Always make sure they have an escape route. And then importantly, educate our kids on being safe outside. Every family is going to be a little bit different, knowing how your kids are and how they interact outside, but it's still safe to have kids playing outside even though there's bears walking through. But it's important to educate them on how they should behave, what are the safe things, such as going inside or yelling at the bear. Obviously, the safest thing is get inside. But it's important to still have kids know that they should yell at the bear. Never approach a bear. Never go try to touch it. Never go try to get better pictures of it. You can give them a whistle or give them an air horn and teach them how to use it and when they should use it. We do get asked a lot about bear spray and pepper spray. Bear spray is used as a bear attack deterrent. You may think you only need to use it out in Montana or something, but it can be effective, but make sure you know how to use it safely. There are many, many, many good videos online about how to safely use bear spray, and it certainly is the most effective way to deter a bear from attacking you. Will you ever need to use that in Connecticut for a bear attack? Very, very, very unlikely, but if it gives you peace of mind and at least know you have something, then that's good. An air horn can be just as effective if that bear is overly curious about you from a few feet away and you blast a boat horn at it, he's gonna run. But both can be effective. Just make sure you know how to use it properly. What are some ways that you can help support the bear population? Prevent conflicts. That is the number one way that everyone can support the bear population in Connecticut, is to prevent conflicts before they happen. Stop filming them, start scaring them. Report your bear sightings to us so we do have a better sense of what problems people are really experiencing out there. You can report them online, you can call us, and continue to learn about the work that we are actually doing. There are so many misconceptions about the work we do and how we try to manage the population that it often counteracts, makes it less helpful for people if they don't really know what we're doing. So continue to learn about what we do to study the bears and to work with them. Talk to your neighbors about preventing wildlife conflicts. If you know your neighbor is sloppy with their garbage, or they still have that hummingbird feeder out, talk to them about it, and in a good, nice way, and say, hey, I know we get the bears a lot coming through here. The hummingbird feeder is still going to be attractive, and I don't want them looking around here all the time for food. Leave cubs alone. Cubs can be left up in a tree. A female might leave her cubs up in a tree for hours, even a couple days if she's out foraging in other areas, especially if those cubs were drawing attention from people. She's not going to come back until it's safe. So let cubs be. They're fine up in trees. You might leave them in sort of a nursery tree. Don't see this as much this time of year because cubs are a lot more mobile, but just important to keep that in mind. And again, our goal, supporting that bear population, keeping bears wild. All right, we don't live in a big remote ecosystem like Yellowstone where the bears can just run wild and do whatever. We don't need anything. There are trash cans and bird feeders everywhere. So those are all things that are outside of, in those more wild ecosystems that aren't there. So we are unique here. All right, as we kind of wrap it up, a couple key takeaways I want to have you guys just think about. You guys now know what ear tags mean. Do they mean that's a dangerous problem bear over and over? No. Are bears overpopulated and running out of habitat? No. Are they dangerous? Well, they are big, wild animals. If it was a raccoon, you shouldn't go up and approach it and think it's a cute, cuddly animal. It's a wild animal and respect it. Bears are the same way. By nature, they aren't aggressive. It's very unlikely that one is going to want to have any interaction with you, let alone see you as, have an aggressive encounter with you. But they are a wild animal, and it's possible. And it has happened with black bears. What leads to most of our human-bear conflicts? Trash and bird feeders. Those are the big ones. Is it really a big deal if a bear gets my bird feeder? Yes, it is. Why don't bears get relocated after causing a problem? Generally, relocation is not an effective tool. All right, bears, especially in a small state, have a very good homing instinct. All right, you move bears a small ways. In Connecticut, it might be a long way by Connecticut standards, but a short distance in terms of what bears are capable of returning. So bears can return after they've been relocated and moved. Along that way, they're more likely to get hit by a vehicle. And then if it's a bear that's already been causing a lot of issues, breaking into houses, things like that, it's not a very effective tool at reducing that bear's conflicts by trying to move it somewhere else, because it may just as likely return and continue that behavior, or continue that behavior where it gets moved to. So generally, it's not a tool that we use. Thinking about what the tools we have available to us, it's not one that is usually one that's going to be very effective. I've talked again about why Western Connecticut has more bear conflicts. That's where our breeding population is. That's where most of the bears really are. These two other points I'm going to talk about a little bit following this, but questions to think about. Do other states have laws regarding bear hunting and feeding? And then what role does hunting play in wildlife management? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because Connecticut doesn't have bear hunting. All right, there's a statute that doesn't allow it. So it's not one of the tools that we have available to us to help manage the population. But I just want to help share a little bit of information about it. Hunting is a tool. Hunting and trapping are tools used by wildlife managers to help manage populations. There's a lot to that, depending on the species that you're using to manage. But it's not, it can help reduce conflicts. It's effective at reducing conflicts, and it's part of conflict mitigation in other parts, in other states, but not so in Connecticut. It can reduce conflicts, but it's not a silver bullet. If magically there was bear hunting in Connecticut, we would still be dealing with these issues. We need all these things to come in place to help us reduce these the bear conflicts. So in summary again, because this part gets misconstrued a lot, we don't have bear hunting in Connecticut. All the other states in Connecticut, outside here that have bear populations do have bear hunting. Hunting can be effective at reducing human-bear conflicts, but it's not going to stop all conflicts. So we need to continue to do those other things I've mentioned about preventing conflicts, especially because those are the only tools we have in Connecticut. Looking at this chart here, we see expanding and stable bear populations throughout the region, all much, much higher than us. I've already kind of mentioned this. Which ones have bear hunting? They all do except us. Which states prohibit feeding? Less of them do, but for the most part, most prohibit intentional feeding. We only recently joined those ranks, but the point of this chart here, you don't need to get bogged down in the numbers. This stuff is available on our State of the Bears report as well, is that most states harvest between 5 and 20% of their bear population every year. All right, those populations, as I showed you, are still expanding and growing, and we want our population to continue to expand and grow. But it helps to reduce conflicts by increasing some of that population turnover, and it helps to, I should say, the more habituated bears are more likely to get harvested when that's during a hunting season. So it can be an effective tool at helping to reduce human bear conflicts. It's not going to solve all of them, but I just want to kind of help provide some perspective to that issue because it gets brought up a lot. It's not a tool that we have, and that's kind of where I'm going to leave that. So DEEP is a member of Bearwise. They do have a lot of very good resources for us. You can go on bearwise.org and find out a lot more information about bears. We have some of their resources here on the back table. You can also scan these QR codes to find out more information about bears in Connecticut, going to our Living with Black Bear page. We have a number of articles that we've written, and more educational videos, etc. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Sergeant DeFelice, who's going to share a lot more about what NCON does on their side regarding bears.
Awesome job. Great presentation. My name is Sam DeFelice. I'm the supervisor for the conservation officers that cover the western side of the state. I specialize in the northwest corner, so I'm with a lot of you when you're dealing with some of these bear issues. So I will say this, excuse me. I have a small farm, so a lot of these same conflict that you're having, I'm having. I raise my hand, I have a bear-proof dumpster. It's an extra $10 a month for my service. And I will tell you, within 3 days, I had an immediate difference. Day one, it was clawing and biting at the top of my dumpster. Day two, day three, rolled it back over. And I don't have bear conflict in my house anymore. So I'm trying to lead with what I'm saying, and I'm saying that I did notice it. I do have cows, I have goats, chickens. I got about 8 miles of electric fence, running somewhere around 7 to 8 joules from the house. So it packs a bit of a punch, but I've noticed a massive decrease with the conflict I'm having with my animals. So I'm personally saying that I am seeing a direct result. But me, as a member of my family, we have to kind of change the culture within our family. So when branches fall down, when the grass needs to get cut, we need to make sure that we're maintaining the grass around the electric fence. A fun way to do that is after a storm or after a couple days, I get my children, I get my wife, we go for a family walk around the pasture, and we're going through and we're picking up sticks and making sure that nothing's grounding out around the electric fence. So we make it fun. But we had to change the culture in my family. Talked about out west, Yellowstone. I've done family trips out to Yellowstone, Grand Teton, Glacier National Park, heavy bear presence. But let me tell you, the culture out there, if a tourist drops a piece of garbage and doesn't throw it in a dumpster, the public there who's been dealing with their bears is quick to stop that visitor, that tourist, and say, no, we don't deal with things like this here. Here we put our garbage away. Here we have, we have positive actions that we do, and they kind of self-police the tourists as they come through. So a lot of times in these communities, I'm having less conflict in towns like Salisbury, Cornwall, and Goshen because the community culture has changed. So right now I've been working extensively with Simsbury, with Avon, with Canton, with Farmington Valley, to just try to help change the culture. So many people tell me that bird feeders don't negatively affect bear behavior. I did a great job of showing you by the numbers how that does happen. So I'm just trying to let us all know something happens, bear breaks in, my officers will go out, they'll do a thorough investigation, and they're constantly just trying to help the public understand how we can change our behavior so we don't have that conflict anymore. Yes, ma'am.
Does your trash, when you leave your trash out for trash day, do you have to go out right before and open the trash can? So
what happens is it's a reinforced dumpster. The underneath is enforced. I still have the plastic lid. The bar goes over top, clip, clip. So the trash company comes out, they unclip, goes over. And then when I see that the clips are unhooked, there's no garbage in there, but I just go through and reclip it. That's the extent of it. Hard part for me is my wife sometimes likes to leave it for me on the porch, but that's an attractant, so I tell her, we can't do that, let me know if you're gonna do that, and I take an extra walk out to my dumpster. So, sir.
The bear cans are so effective, why aren't they just open?
Why aren't they what?
Just open to the public, why are they paying?
I have to pay for my trash service, so. Well, why do I have to pay more? Because it's an additional service. So I spoke with Paynes the other day. Paynes has to hire a welder to come through and retrofit these dumpsters because they weren't designed to be black bear resistant. So they have to take extra steps to get those dumpsters up to par. So that's why there's an additional charge, because they have to kind of make modifications to their existing dumpsters.
Excuse me, are you talking about dumpsters or personal garbage cans?
Both, there's both. Just from my experience, I have a small dumpster at my house.
Because I think you get confused with regular trash can, our personal trash can.
Regular trash cans. I don't have one, so I can't speak to it, but if,
like when you put your garbage out on the street, you have regular garbage cans that All Waste or whoever.
I have seen some of those that when they reach a upside down fashion, like when the garbage truck comes to flip them, it releases a latch inside. and other ones that there's a small latch for you to press and it'll open the lid.
The Payne's barrel is automatic with the lifter. You don't have to do anything extra.
Right. Does that answer your question, sir?
I would say if you know you have those concerns that you think they should be that should be the can that's offered, talk to the town. Right, encourage the town to have that be a condition that work for the company to only offer bear resistant cans in the town. They need to be everywhere. Everywhere where there are bears and bear conflicts needs to be bear resistant trash cans. It'll take time to change all that over, but that's what we need. Yeah.
I just want to mention that Payne's bear-proof trash can, it only costs an additional $5 a month. So you can get on the list for that. And that would be a great idea. And just to mention, I'm with the Simsbury Range, and we just got a matching grant for wildlife education. We're giving out free wildlife deterrent kits, kind of similar to the information you brought tonight. You can pick them up at Simsbury Farms. And what we're also including is a real low-tech, really annoying solution, which is money, actually, in a glass jar. It sounds horrible. I won't shake it now. But all of them come with a range of real money inside, ranging from 12 to 45 cents.
So that's kind of as a noisemaker to shake and makes a really loud noise. That can also be.
You can do it. The other thing is, don't just do it once. Do it until the bear leaves. That's an animal behavior thing. Don't just bang the can and say, oh, it didn't leave. You have to be really persistent.
And those could be effective for scaring coyotes away or any other kind of animal like that too. Yes.
Okay, so this is the situation in my neighborhood on my street. I really think the bears know when trash pickup day is.
Do.
Yes. People put their trash cans out, we'll see them overturned. So how do we do with that? Second, we have tried, the noise. I mean, my husband was driving the car right up to the bear in our yard, leaning on the horn, and the bear just ignores every sound that we try to make to get them out of our area. What else do we do?
I got that answer for you.
Thank you. I'd love to hear it.
All right, so one of our jobs as police officers here in the town of Simsbury is to ensure public safety, right? So you call the police department, an officer will respond. Our police officers are all trained to deal with all types of wildlife. We also have an animal control officer who's Monday through Friday, and then our police officers fill in when our animal control officer is not there. We need you to call the police department. We track all this information. We share this information with biologists, we share it with the DEP NCON officers. It's really important, because a big part of the problem is we are not getting the notifications. So if we don't know that you're having a problem with what sounds to be like an extremely habituated bear, we can't fix that problem. But we have special, non-invasive, non-harmful tools at our disposal that we can use to help safeguard yourselves.
Okay, so you want us to call you every time? The bears don't come to my yard so much anymore, but my
Every
neighbors,
time. Every time.
all the time. And we have a neighbor who actually was out with these bears.
Then we want to know about
We need to know that.
Okay, so my neighbor did call,
What?
somebody went to speak to that individual, but it hasn't made a change.
So you bring up a really good point. You're having a problem with a specific person on your street. Nobody wants to tattle on their neighbor, right? We get that. And we are also not in a position to just go out there and just arbitrarily start arresting and ticketing people. We don't want to do that. We are in partnership with our community. That extends to our wildlife too. So we want to make sure that we can go out there, myself, Officer Clark, a lot of our police officers, we're going to go out there, we're going to knock on their door, we're going to introduce ourselves, and we are going to try and educate them not only on state law, but also town ordinances. What is their behavior doing? And how do we have to fix it? We have to change their behavior. So the first step that we're going to try and do is provide a little bit of education. We're going to provide them with some handouts from the Bear Wise program, things that are given to us by the DEP. I think Officer Clark and Kyle are on a daily phone call, text message conversation every single day, detailing what we have going on here in the town.
So you would visit an individual more than once?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, good, that's really good to know, thank you. I
don't know, assaults and car breakings and all that. And what you're saying, all due respect, this is not the experience that my friends are getting in the Northwest Corner.
What time is that?
So I appreciate if you can, you know, give us a way to, you know, a more productive, more effective way, as opposed to calling. And then if that individual is having an issue with the bear, it's gonna take you guys time to respond to the house. You know, maybe it's a serious conflict and there's no time for that person to, you know, call the police and say, hey, I'm having a problem. I mean, this is not a real life solution. Maybe it works in Simsbury, it's not working in the Northwest Corner.
What tenants are we specifically talking about? Because I guarantee you,
Plantsville. And the bear has eaten a goat, and the bear has eaten all the chickens on my friends.
Did you say Mansfield?
Plantsville.
Plantsville.
Wait.
Plansville is Southington.
Maybe I'm mistaken. It's around Norfolk. Am I, I'll
Okay.
give you the town.
That's still
Maybe
me,
I'm
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, again, because I deal with Norfolk, so majority of everyone the people I'm for the most part interacting with have taken the right steps to change the behavior. I have not received any calls that I'm aware of recently of there being any human bear conflict except for one town, which we're currently addressing. So, but it doesn't change
The
overnight.
neighbors don't feed bears, they don't have any feeding issues. This is a bear that comes, or maybe multiple bears, that they're attacking chickens, eating chickens, they have eaten goats, a goat for the neighbors.
Have they had their properties evaluated by like the NCON officers to make sure they're doing all the proper steps? They're clearing vegetation, they're running electric, not only poultry nets, they're running hot wires, making sure they could be running, an electric net or an electric fence, but if it's not properly grounded with 3-foot ground rods, daisy chain 3 feet apart, and they're not, in the summertime, the ground loses its moisture content. So if they're not going out there with a 5-gallon pail every week and pouring that water on the grounding source, then the efficacy of their, electric system might not be working. But I'm sure, because I know these gentlemen up here, if you get their contact information for your friend who's having this problem with the bear, they will personally drive out there.
Yes.
And they will evaluate that because we are on the farmer's side too. I had 200 chickens here in town, 200 birds. Didn't lose one to the bears. I've had chickens, pigs, goats. My neighbor runs his oxen on my property. And we run a very, very tight ship. We make sure that our vegetation is trimmed. We're making sure we're running, the proper jewels on the wiring. We are getting out there. I'm a police officer here in town, but I still call the police to make sure that they're coming out here with their noise devices. They're coming out here with less lethal beanbag shotguns. Previously we transitioned to a different tool. So we're getting out there, we're doing scare tactics, we're making noise, we are using distraction devices, we're using pain compliance. The DEP was using beanbag shotguns.
Beanbags, rubber buckshots. We have used bear spray. I feel your frustration because there's something very frustrating when I'm responding to the same house over and over and over again, and no steps have been taken to mitigate the human bear conflict. I know these guys who we work with daily can share that frustration. As a homeowner, as a farmer, as a homesteader, there's certain steps that we have to take. We have to take ownership of the things that are happening. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to just show how taking these few steps can reduce the conflict. Yes, it can be absolutely frustrating if a neighbor is acting a certain way and it's causing conflict on my behalf. Yes, call us. We'll come out and talk to your neighbor. In that case, that would be me that you'd be calling. So if there's something that you want to talk to me afterwards, I'm happy to talk to you about.
Yes, I will for sure, but I'm sorry, so they've called DT multiple times and they haven't gotten a response. I will see you afterwards and I will get contact, but not everybody has the advantage of having an officer's contact and being referred. So for the ordinary people who have their issues and call DT, and DT is overwhelmed by calls for bears because we're seeing more and more conflicts. So I think there should be another way of.
We have a 24/7 dispatch center. And I have had people say that they're calling, and I don't know what number they're calling, but many times I've had it where it's not even in our dispatch line. 860-424-3333, we have dispatchers on all the time. We may not have an officer able to immediately respond, but someone's going to follow up with you. And if not, I'll give you my number and you can follow up. You can follow up with me afterwards.
Back there in the front.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, and I really appreciate that you haven't held back on any of the information, because I've been in the practice since 2016, and I've been to some of these presentations, and there was very little mentioned about the real conflict. I'm glad you brought up about Boyd and Morris that was dragged into the woods, and that bear had to be euthanized, really with the intent to kill and eat that Boyd. I think we reached a critical mass, and I applaud you, and I hope everyone here takes the heart to sensate in terms of, at this grassroots level, create a community where we can do what we can do. But let me tell you, the onus is on the state. Where are the legislators? Are they here in the audience tonight? Are they listening to any of this? Democrats and Republicans? We need to stabilize your population. Your graphic was wonderful that showed surrounding states where it has to stabilize because of the limited bear hunting. We need a jump start. Great that we can do all the things you recommend, and thank you for sharing them with us, but we need a jump start. The population has to be reduced quickly. I think there's people sitting here, I talk to a woman coming in, getting a barbecue, bear comes up to the table. It's out of control. It's past the hour of, taking these measures. Something more radical has to be done, and I hold the state responsible. Why are people having to put their money out to purchase garbage cans that are specialized, to protect against bears? Why am I out spending, $100 on a can of bear spray? They should be issuing those to homes if that's what they want. Who pays for the destruction and grief that are brought these homeowners that have their homes torn apart? Is the state coming in and repairing these homes? I want to see them step up to the plate.
Yeah, I think it can help people here. And, a lot of their experience, at least 40 years working with a lot of black bears. These Japanese people gave you some good advice, some excellent advice. I think I would like to just point out a few things where I may have a difference of opinion based on my experience. When they talk about how to scare a bear away, you have to be cognizant of bears are like people, and there are different situations for that bear. It could be wounded, it could be hungry, it could be a friendly bear, it could be a not so friendly bear. When you approach a bear to scare it away, you need to face that bear. As she said, you need to be persistent. A noisemaker like that is very effective, more effective if it's in a tin can. Deepa's told you bear spray is your best defense against attack. I can tell you that bear spray is your best defense against any bear or any situation, and it will be the longest lasting deterrent for a bear. They hate it, but you need to learn how to use it. It's not effective for me to that person. It's effective for me to you if he's the bear. Not many people will want to take that opportunity to get that close to a bear. But understand bears. If you go waving your hands and shouting and throwing things at it, if I did that to you, you would be headed for the parking lot. If I approach you calmly, quietly, okay, in a non-threatening manner, I can approach you. If I say, take it easy, it's okay, take it easy. If I want you to go, I just tell you, go. And I keep telling you to go, go. Many times the bear will go. If it doesn't go, I have my bear spray. And I keep approaching that bear until I close it down to that 15-foot mark. And I know that the wind is coming from my back to the bear, not into my face. That's a bad thing. You don't want bear spray in your face. But when that bear gets that bear spray, it is not gone for 5 minutes. It's not gone for a day. you probably won't see that bear for a very long time, if ever. But if you go waving and threatening and do all this stuff, you can actually create fear in that bear, where he's going to stomp on the ground. He's going to try and threaten you, because they like to, their defense is, I need to be bigger than you. So just be cognizant of that, of when you're dealing with bears, okay? The sounds work, okay? Even throwing something at a bear, snapping a stick, well, they hate snapping sticks. So if you find a dead stick on the ground, hit the tree. You'll see
Thank you.
bears.
So I'm going to try to get some more questions, but
Huh?
thank you for your comments. We're going to keep moving on to other questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And just for safety, we don't encourage people to approach bears.
On what the gentleman said, please?
Pardon?
Can we get your expert opinion, because you're the expert?
Yeah, we wouldn't encourage people to try to approach bears. That's pretty much.
Say that again, please.
We would not encourage people to approach bears.
Can you ask about grills, grills, cookout grills?
Yeah, grill. I mean, if you think about a grill that has the grease trap and everything, it's going to smell like all those things. It can still be attractive to bears. So it's good habits just to keep that grill clean, clean out the grease trap, and maintain that thing, right? And same thing as it gets to be July 4th coming up, people having the barbecues. It's just be mindful of those attractants outside, of the trash. Clean up the garbage from the picnic quickly, get it into the garbage can. Don't leave it out and then move on to your next activity, because that's going to be an invitation for an animal, whether it be a bear or a raccoon or something, to come get into that trash can. So with the holiday coming up, try to be cognizant, especially of those kinds of outdoor attractants. Yep, and striped shirt.
If your neighbors or people continuously disregard the use of your trash cans or your bird feeders, you guys ever give a citation? After you met them and told them the deal, do you guys ever do it?
On a local level, yes, we have a town ordinance that you guys can all be familiar with. It's pretty detailed, and we will educate that person first. And then after that, we will have a really good discussion on how we're gonna enforce that. The fine in our town ordinance is $250, and I can charge that every day the violation is occurring. So it's pretty steep, and I think it's even steeper than the state statute. So for us, we are weighing very heavily on our first encounter with an individual as an education piece. Then after that, we will consider issuing fines thereafter. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Does the EEP recommend a fair hunting season?
We've generally been supportive of bear hunting as a tool for population management, of regulating the population. But, we're not supportive of any particular bill or something that might come up. Everything might be a little different, but generally we're supportive of a bear harvest, a tool that we can use to regulate where the population will grow and be allowed to grow, and where it can be stabilized and where it may need to be reduced in some ways. But it's not a tool we have, so we don't spend too much time thinking about it. Yeah.
Hunting's not a tool you have now, but the last thing I've been reading is that the population roughly increases 10% every year of new bears being born and bred and kept, new bears coming up through the mothers. Okay. Do you have any rough, even though you don't have the legislation behind you to have a hunting season, do you have any rough number of where you might figure this 10% increase each year might reach a maximum where you might want to push on your end the favorment of having a hunting season to decrease the ever-increasing number at some point?
Yeah, I mean, the population has the potential to grow fast at that rate. It maybe not, isn't every year, partly because we don't get population estimates every year to know exactly what the percent growth is, but we know it's been growing and it's expanding. Those are kind of our big takeaways there. But we've, as a program, we've advocated to have that tool available to us, and that goes through the legislative process. So it's not been available to us, but we've advocated for having that tool available to us, like all the other neighboring states have, as a tool to have, to apply it in the right areas at the right times to help manage that.
I'll tell you why I mainly bring it up. I come from Maine originally. It's forever, it was one deer only on that species. I've been hunting in Saco, Maine the last 3 years because I've got 3 tags for deers last year because so many were being bred in the population of a suburban more area. And that was their tool for thinning out the herd, like you would thin out your garden, like you'd thin out anything. So eventually, I can't see how the state wouldn't try to listen to, at least if you had some backing from you guys, that bears have to be taken care of at some point. Not necessarily right now, but as a tool to help you control the population.
I get what you're saying. So every time you call the police department, I'm just talking about Simsbury alone. Every time you call the police department, it generates a case number. The case number goes with an address and a brief description of what that call type is.
Okay.
Officer Clark goes through every single month and she comes up with a comprehensive bear report. What bear did what the property damage was it just an encounter? And then we take that information, we provide it to the town, all right? It goes up all the way up to the town manager, and then we share the information with each other. We, at our level, are not going to be able to make this massive push or influence on whether or not we get a hunting season on these bears. It's a very polarized topic. We have those who are in favor of it and those who are adamantly against it. So if you are interested in pushing or protecting, if you want to protect the bears and you don't want a hunting season, or if you want regulation and to thin the herd, as you said, then you need to go to your legislative level. And you need to start submitting your written requests. You need to sit down with your legislators, and you need to start having a conversation with them. It's not going to start with us. So it's really the voice of the people, and we encourage you guys to go out and handle it that way.
I won't take up much more time, just one last quick thing, but what rights do I have over a neighbor that refuses to call and do things? Because when it was really, really hot 2 weeks ago, I think this is why the bear went, I got pictures of it in the prints like this, why it went underneath the guy's porch and ripped off cedar shingles like crazy, because he wanted to get cool. It was 99 and 98, 97 for like 4 or 5 days. Everybody's telling me, Roaring Brook, he wants to go in a brook. Animals don't sleep in a brook at night. This bear wanted to go underneath that porch, 20 feet from my driveway. But he doesn't want to report it government-wise.
If you know about it, then make the report. Because one of the big takeaways that's coming from this presentation is keep the animals wild. We want to keep them away from our houses. We want to do everything that we can to get them back into the woods, start foraging in the woods, start habitating in the woods, raising their youngs in the wood. We cannot have them in our neighborhoods where we're raising our youngs because it is bound to have some sort of conflict. So if you know that there's a bear underneath your neighbor's porch, you can call your police department and you can make an anonymous report and just say, hey, I think I saw a bear underneath the neighbor's porch at this address. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to go knock on the door. We're going to make contact with this person.
Oh, he's going to know I called.
All right. Sometimes as adults, it's very hard for us, but we have to make tough decisions for other people who might put themselves.
Well, I
in a
really like the
compromised
guy, but
position.
what happened before that, like 6 months, he was in his garage and he threw a bucket through the open window at a bear behind the garage. He ran in the house and that bear came around and got up on its hind legs and looked in through the garage window.
It's unbearable.
Well, the bears are smart and knows what happens. I'm a little nervous for the guy in a way, but I don't like him 20 feet from my driveway either.
We can go out and educate them.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just a matter of having a conversation.
Yeah.
We're not gonna, if you
And
don't know.
I don't mind
you
doing
can't
that,
help.
but I know he's not going to be happy with me, but I don't mind talking about anything about it.
Your safety is important too, and
Yeah,
so is all the
everybody's.
other neighbors, because I'm pretty sure they're going to have a very common sentiment that you do.
And
As
just
you.
to kind of add on to there, bears are always going to be here in Simsbury. We're going to see them in the community. You know, we live in an area where our backyard is full of woods still. Even with population management, there's still going to be bears in the community, and that's why going after the food-related issues is going to help solve that part in a large part here. But even, you know, if there were to somehow down the road be bear hunting, we would still have bears all around Simsbury, all around this part of Connecticut. This is bear habitat. Yeah.
Yeah, So here's the deal. There's no season for bear, right? If you are involved in a motor vehicle strike with a bear that needs to be safely dispatched, please contact us, let us know. If you dispatch a bear that's clearly struck by a car and you call us to report it, an officer responds and says that everything is consistent, still gonna do an investigation. Make everything's consistent with you dispatching it for the, best intent of the animal. Okay, that's one thing. There is a new law that's out this session where you have the ability to protect yourself or third person if you feel as though you are gravely endangered in the immediate incident. What that means is if a bear is attacking you, you have the ability to defend yourself or a third person.
No, but I'm not talking about me euthanizing the bear. What about you guys?
Are you talking about us?
Right.
Okay. Well, I'm going to speak from the conservation officer standpoint, which is the same policy that the wildlife biologists have, which we follow a bear response guideline. And we have 4 categories of bear. Category 1 is a bear walking through your front yard, bear being a bear. Okay, there's nothing for me to do other than tell you that that's a bear. It's the truth. It's a bear walking, in the woods. Category 2 bears, it's hitting your garbage can. Well, secure your garbage can. It's creating some minor damage. Okay, well then, address that. Category 3 bear, which meeting Brooks had recently, is a bear that I have nowhere, it's in a densely populated area with nowhere else to go. I cannot push it. Remember we talked about when you're hazing a bear, you're gonna be cognizant that you have an area of egress. So in those scenarios where there is no egress to go and I can't get the bear safely moved out of there, then we have a special team of people that are trained in chemical immobilization that will relocate that bear to the next closest habitat. A category 4 bear is a bear that is a public safety threat, that is attacking people, that is entering homes, that is damaging, killing livestock that is protected. The homeowner has exhausted all the steps possible. The senior most person on site from the Wildlife Division or NCON Police will make a determination that it's a category 4 bear and will euthanize it. And we have a strict program. Officer's gonna write an investigative report. I review it to make sure that his or her actions are in accordance with the bear response guideline, and it's very clean cut. That's it. Does that answer your question?
So if the bear doesn't seem to be afraid of humans?
That's not what I said.
I know, but I'm asking that question. If the bear say is at home, but staying around the yard doesn't seem to be afraid of humans, would you euthanize the bear or tranquilize it?
No. The bear's, what you're describing is a habituated bear. That's a bear that's so comfortable around people, it's not scared. What I want you to do is, we're talking about creating environments where that doesn't happen. Creating uncomfortable environments. That's why we talked about those noisemakers. That's why we talked about bear spray. That's why we talked about different hazing into egresses. We want that bear to be uncomfortable. That's what we're trying to create. That's the conversation that we're trying to have.
Are you a resident here in town, sir?
No, it can't.
All right, so if you have a bear that's in your neighborhood, around your house, that's constantly coming around, looking for food, trying to be curious and, maybe pawing at your door or something because it might smell something delicious inside your house, you need to call the Canton Police Department because I know them, and they will send probably 1 or 2 officers out there, and they are also equipped with hazing tools so that they can use beanbag shotguns, they can use spray, they can use their sirens. They have a multitude of tools that they can haze the bear. We're talking about hazing, like we want to give a little pain compliance to it. We want to make them uncomfortable. The gentleman talked about spraying bears. It hurts. It hurts for about 45 minutes. We've all been sprayed with pepper spray. It's awful. All right. You can use a beanbag shotgun. They're good enough to use them on human beings. That's why we have them designed. We use them on these nuisance animals to give them pain. It's not killing them. It's not penetrating them in any way. It's causing a nice big punch to wherever we shoot them, and we're sending them back into the woods saying, do not come back to this house. You might have to call 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and we might have to go out there and haze them. But I can assure you, just this last month alone, Officer Clark and I have gone out there and we have tagged, not tagged by ear tag, but we have deployed less lethal munitions, beanbags, crushable foam rounds. They look like really heavy duty Nerf balls, and they come out really fast, and they hurt really, really bad. And we have been tagging a lot of bears in the butt cheeks with them, and they are taking off into the woods. And now what we have created is every time these bears see us, they take off running. They see a perfect example. I was driving down Old Farms Road yesterday off duty in my truck, and there's a bear in the yard, and I deal with this bear all the time. We all do. And I got out in flip-flops and running shorts, and that bear saw me and took off running. It works, but it only works if you call us. Get a tag number. Get a tag color. Does it have a collar on it? Does it have some sort of identifying feature on it? We have a lot of very unique bears here in Simsbury. Some of them have like a white V on their chest. Some of them have a white paw. If you can provide that information not only to us, but you can use what Kyle was talking about, which is one of those wildlife report forms online. Pack the record with information, because he's going to use it. We're all going to use it, and then we can start formulating maybe a different game plan.
I wanted to ask about bear and bobcat tend to poop in my yard at least once a year. I have a dog. I mean, maybe they poop in everybody's yard, but my dog likes to roll in it. I'm trying to figure out, are they marking because I have a pretty large dog?
No, I would just say it happens to be coincidence. There's probably food nearby. I would say they're not probably marking because of the dog, unless you were to see it on like a location where a bobcat or a bear might be, putting that out like over a log or something for a bobcat. But it's probably more just its proximity to where they traveled and where they had food and when they felt the urge, especially for the bear.
I'm Annie Harnish with the Humane Society of the United States and the Connecticut Director. I want to just first applaud you for this presentation. This is probably the best one I've seen given by you in many years. You offered a lot of good tips, really good advice for helping people address bear conflicts in a community-wide way. And that's exactly, a lot of people make comments that their neighbors aren't acting appropriately. And that's exactly where the community, I think, needs to come together and utilize police and animal control in the state to get their neighbors to comply so we can find a solution to the bear conflicts. Because this is really a bear conflict issue. It's not a bear population matter. There's other areas of the country that have much denser human populations with far fewer conflicts. And they've learned how to live with bears. That's why they keep the bears wild where they should be. And that's why I just want to say hunting doesn't work to reduce conflicts. That's been shown in study after study, because it doesn't address the problem behavior. It addresses the depopulation, but in a non-specific manner. They kill bears in the woods, not necessarily the problem bears. But I just want to thank you for the presentation tonight.
Thank you. And I know because we're not gonna get into a debate about the topic one way or the other, but there are some cases, though, there's studies that show that hasn't been the case, particularly in New Jersey, where they had hunting, didn't have hunting, and finding that habituated bears were more likely to get harvested. And another piece of perspective is that bears move so much. As I mentioned, bears travel so much that bears in Simsbury, I think, well, how is hunting ever going to, reduce the bears or remove bears that are highly habituated in Simsbury? It's because bears move so much. So there may not be a lot of area in Simsbury that could be hunted per se. There's more than probably many of you think, but bears move so much, particularly in the fall, where a bear can be, up in the woods, can be out in Tunxus State Forest, up in Heartland, and then down in Plainville and Southington, all within that fall period of time where they're moving so much. So you know, we're not going to get into one way back and the other, but there's a lot of information out there that is worth learning more about, with how bears move and how hunting seasons are conducted for bears in other states. Who hasn't had a chance? Yeah.
Also, congratulate you. I have severe hearing problems, so we look forward to watching this on tape. However, what I'm hearing mostly is there are consequences to their behavior, and if we can't educate the bears, there are consequences to the bears. I would like to see everybody in this audience and everyone who came and that's already left to have consequences to our neighbors who are not closing their garbage cans. To every time pails goes by, putting them a mess. It is almost, at least in my neighborhood, the same pails, the same people who keep their nails open, and they're not securing their garbage. They're not securing their pet food in their open garage. It's got to be a way we stop being so negligent that we don't want to say, you are putting us in danger, and yes, we are in danger. So, we have an obligation to not be so neighborly and friendly, and let them keep inviting the bears, putting the bears in danger.
Okay, one more, and then we'll be available to, you can ask us more stuff, but yeah, one more.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that and the other question about citations. Because you had said that what we should do is call every time we know that our neighbor is feeding the bears. But at what point, I mean, if she says, no, I'm not, and you say, yes, you are, and she says, no, I'm not, what else can we do to help you get across to her? Get out. Do I need to take myself out and take pictures of her doing this?
No, just call us, let us know. I had one of my officers turned in her citations today. I just reviewed about 8 of them. Many of them were for, illegal feeding of bear. It happens. If it's the point is that we're trying to get the behavior correct.
I want to get the neighbor's behavior correct.
So do I. So do I. That's why we're doing this talk.
Can you get with Officer Clark after this presentation, and we can open up a case number. We can open up an investigation. We say investigation like this bad thing. It's really not. It's a way for us to put an address, a trackable case number, a complainant, anonymous if necessary, who the offenders are, and what steps have we taken previously? Because if we have information, we can look at our historical data. Has this person been warned before?
Yes.
Okay, so what is the next step? If the education hasn't been changed previously, the next step is we're probably going to issue a citation. It's a town ordinance violation. Did you know that failing to secure your trash cans is intentional feedings? It's a $250 ticket. Do you see the police officers out here writing those tickets to the 11,000 homes?
I'm glad to tell you anything that I can contribute to. So we just there are more and more children moving into the neighborhood, and they're outside.
It's a balancing act for everybody
It
involved.
is.
So let's work together, and
Happy.
we'll step off first.
Happy to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.